On the Reddit message boards, people are talking about how they'd love to hear you do a history podcast, Conan. We might have mixed feelings about that and you just kind of moonlighting with another podcast. But other than that, is that something you'd be interested in?
Well, first of all, I'd like to point out that they didn't say in addition to. It could mean they want this one to end.
Oh, no.
And they want something with a little more fiber in it, a little more protein. I always go to the negative right away. And when someone says, hey, you know what you'd be really good at? I think, you mean you don't like the thing I'm doing now? That's an interesting concept. I am a history buff. That's probably come across during our ramblings on the podcast the last couple of years. I also am a consumer of history podcasts. I've said this before, but I absolutely love Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, and I recommend that podcast. It's one of my absolute favorites. That guy tells a great tale, and I've learned so much from listening to Dan Carlin. And then I actually wrote him a fan letter, and I typed it. Sona, you know this. I have an old kooky typewriter, and I typed him a fan letter. And then this is about 2 years ago. And then I think like a month later, I get this letter in the mail, and it's from Dan Carlin, and I'm jumping around the kitchen going, Dan Carlin wrote me back. And my wife's like, what is your problem? But the other one I've been listening to recently is, I just took a long car trip with my kids. We didn't want to fly. We wanted to be safe. So we took this long car ride, and we were in the car together, and we started listening to this podcast that's by a guy named Mike Duncan, and it's called Revolutions. And this guy is thorough. He is very thorough. And I think the point I'm trying to make is when people say, hey, Conan, you should do a history podcast, I've listened to real people that should be doing history podcasts, like Dan Carlin and Mike Duncan. And man, Mike Duncan, he did one on the English Civil War. And it gets so complicated, and it's fascinating, but there's like a whole bunch of episodes explaining how incredibly complicated it all was, to the point where I thought, can't you skip some stuff and just get to the battles? But then he did one on the French Revolution, and I'm listening to it. I've listened to 10 episodes, and they're like 40 minutes each. He hasn't even gotten to the revolution yet.
That's the title of the show.
And but he really takes his time, and it's brilliant. I give it up for Mike Duncan. I am not dissing him in any way. He's a brilliant guy, but man, very intelligent, and he really knows his stuff. And I think that's where I get intimidated. That's where I think I know some stuff about history, and I can maybe shuck and jive and bounce around, but it's not going to be credible.
What era would you start with?
Man, that's a really good question.
Let's have a little taste.
Before we say what era would I start with, what about this? Look at my team. I've got Sona, who doesn't know about anything that happened before NSYNC formed. And then I've got Gourley. Now, I know you know some stuff, but you kind of know some stuff. This is my team. So keep in mind, whatever podcast we do, it's going to be the three of us doing a history podcast. And we're going to say, hey, Conan O'Brien here today, and we are talking about the Russian Revolution.
Oh, no.
Quite an incredible revolution. I'm here with my team of history experts, Sona Movsesian.
Oh, God.
Sona, you know about the Russian Revolution, right?
They had a revolution in Russia? Was that a long time ago? Recently?
Yes, well, it's all relative, but yes, it sort of broke out during World War I.
Okay.
Many people say it was a tottering regime, and World War I was going so badly that it pushed it over the edge. But 1917, I think, is 1918, around then. Those are Russian Revolution years.
I stopped paying attention right after you said World War I. I'm so sorry. Did you say what happened? It was tottering? I heard the word tottering.
Yes.
Okay.
See, this is how it would go. Now, Gourley, you would jump in every now and then,
yeah,
right? You know your stuff.
That's the one where there are all a bunch of wooden dolls that lived inside each other.
Exactly.
With the babushkas.
Yes. Now we're talking. What happened was in Russia in the early 20th century, basically everyone was forced to live inside of someone else, and they were all made of wood. And so this became, now that's how it was for hundreds and hundreds of years. But then as you get into the 20th century and technology's improving, the little doll, the smallest doll at the very center, doesn't want to live inside hundreds of thousands of other dolls. And those other dolls don't want to live inside. And so the dolls start to rebel, and suddenly they burst open, and all the babushka dolls come out, and they're fighting with each other.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm loving this podcast. I think this is a green light.
I want to know when the Russian mail order bride system started. I'm more interested in that than this like revolution you're talking about.
Well, at the time, Sona, they used telegraphs. And so what would happen was that they would post a picture of a babushka lady made of wood, and someone in the United States would see it in their local newspaper, and they'd send a telegraph and say, I like that babushka, that one right there. Send her to me. I live on Delancey Street in Sioux Falls. I'm enclosing $4.15. Send the babushka doll to me, and I will have sex with it.
Jesus. Top of the charts, Apple Podcast, 3 months running.
Yeah, this, the promise of the podcast would be you'll know less than you did before. This podcast will actively make you stupid. So then, of course, Rasputin enters the scene.
Oh, he had a big dick. That's what I know about Rasputin.
Whoa.
Jesus.
Didn't he? That's
Whoa.
the thing that I know. That's the kind of history I think people are interested in, is that he has very large penis.
Well, that's never been confirmed, but it was that was a rumor about Rasputin, who was said to Rasputin, of course, the mad monk who had the ear of the Tsarina, and many people believe helped alienate her even further from the Russian people and helped foment the revolution. Many people thought that Rasputin had to go, and in fact, he was assassinated. But I digress. Anyway, yes, probably big cock. Yeah, big cock.
Wow. That's right up there with Catherine the Great having a bunch of sex with horses. Have you heard that?
No.
Yeah, but that's not true. That just
I'm sure it's not true.
How
but
do you know it's not
just
true?
hear about it.
Do you know Catherine the Great?
I've talked to the horses. Catherine the Great died long ago, but horses keep very good records. I've read many horse diary from the period, and they all say, no, didn't happen, and we take offense.
Sounds like a bunch of bitter horses that weren't selected for the big night.
Yeah, that could kill you.
Yeah.
Having sex with a horse?
How could it not kill you?
I know.
You know what? Here's the thing. It's clear what our history podcast would be. And if Dan Carlin's listening, or Mike Duncan, my apologies. Or to anyone in the true history community. But this is what my history podcast would be like. I would start the podcast by saying, of course, Harry S. Truman was faced with a very difficult decision. Does he fire MacArthur because he has gone north of the parallel line in Korea and incurred the wrath of the Chinese government? Or does he, and then Sona would cut in and go, did MacArthur have a big dick? And I'd go, what? And then the next thing you know would be off and running. And maybe it would just be it would be me trying the best I could.
I think that's pretty good. And I say to Dan Carlin and Mike Duncan, step it up a little.
Yeah.
You know?
Do we need all that information?
Right.
And also, you can't talk about Rasputin without talking about his penis, because that's what everybody knows about him.
Or that song. You remember that song? Rah, rah, Rasputin, lover of the Russian queen. There was a cat who really was gone.
Is that the lyric?
Yes.
Well, that's this week's episode of Big Dick History. We covered the Russian Revolution, babushka dolls living inside each other, Rasputin, the old tripod, as they called him.
Next week, Milton Berle and the Rise of Vaudeville.
Yeah. Next week, Milton Berle, the Rise of Vaudeville. And then we'll be talking about a scandal involving Bess Truman. Boy, you don't want to miss that one.